Greetings, my friends. My name is David McLeod, and I am your life mastery coach and author of the delightful little book, A Life to Die For. I'm also one of the co-authors in the best-selling series, The Wellness Universe Guide to Complete Self-Care. Today, I'd like to welcome you to Life Mastery TV, your source for inspiration, empowerment, and fulfillment. This is episode 242, and today our topic title is Fun with Mindful Eating. Boy, that just makes me hungry just thinking about it, right? Mindful nutrition is not just about what you eat, but how you eat it. It involves bringing your attention to the experience of eating, including the taste, texture, smell of food, as well as all the sensations in your body. By practicing mindful eating, you become more aware of your body's hunger and fullness cues, allowing you to make healthier choices and to avoid overeating. Mindful eating emphasizes the importance of savoring each and every bite and eating with intention, rather than slipping into an unconscious pattern of consuming food out of habit or in response to emotions. Learning to enjoy mindful nutrition can transform the way you think about food and dieting. Instead of viewing it as a restrictive or tedious task, you can learn to see it as an opportunity to nourish your body and indulge in the pleasures of eating. Experimenting with different flavors, ingredients, cooking techniques, and all kinds of other stuff can make mealtime exciting and enjoyable. Whether you're trying new recipes, exploring ethnic cuisines, or simply taking the time to appreciate the taste of fresh produce, mindful eating encourages you to embrace food as a source of pleasure, satisfaction, and health. For this episode of Life Mastery TV, I'm excited to bring my friend and colleague, Ricki McKenna, onto the show. Ricki is passionate about preparing and sharing real food. As a certified nutritionist, she has 24 years of experience as a best-selling author, a public speaker, a dream builder coach, and a weekly Zoom show host. Ricki is a loving, playful, and joyful person who brings lots of enthusiasm to everything she does. So please join me in welcoming Ricki McKenna to the program today. I should have some background music playing right now.
Da, 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 da.
There you go. Hi, Ricki. Welcome to Life Mastery TV. Yeah, I thank you so much for joining me. I know I've been bugging you about this for a long time, and I'm glad we finally were able to get our schedules to work out. So it's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. And thank you so much for that fabulous introduction. I don't have to say anything else now. You've said,
oh, we're done.
We're done. No, we're not. We're just beginning.
That's right.
And that's a very interesting way to put it, because, people will get an idea about something and say, okay, I got it. And then it goes.
That's right.
And what I'm hoping for with the idea of mindful eating is playing with this idea, and people realize that, you got to, it pervades everything. It goes through all of your life. It's not just about eating, as you said. It's about affecting every part of you, because food affects every part of us, even the thought of it, the smell of it, the sight of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, you mentioned something about having fun or enjoying mindful eating, and I'm thinking, what good is life if you can't laugh at it, if you can't have a sense of humor about it, if you can't have fun with it? And when you think about it, aside from sleeping, we spend a lot of time involved with food. Mm-hmm. We're preparing food, we're eating food, we're buying food, we're doing all these things. It's a pretty important topic for sure.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Well, no matter who you are or where you are on this planet, and even if you're up in a space vehicle, you have to eat. And that's
unless you're what they call it, an aeritarian or a breatharian or something like that.
Breatharian. I heard that years ago, and I thought, interesting. Deep breaths.
Yeah, I've read some stuff about somehow being able to get energy through just the atmosphere, and I thought, okay, maybe that's possible, but I don't think I'd enjoy it very much.
It doesn't taste
I think I so enjoy food, so many different kinds of food, and
yes.
I'm not well, having had the experience of food, I'm sure I'm not ready to give that one up,
No,
you know?
don't. Please don't. It's a
Yeah, right.
necessary thing.
Now
Yeah.
I'm gonna rat you out here
Uh-oh.
because you and I talked about this, and it's something that I think people need to know, because it just kind of helps me to understand your personality so much more. You
Uh-oh.
shared with me that you used to race cars,
I did. On
and
the track.
and I have a funny feeling that there is a relationship here between the cars and the food, and I really want to dig down into that. And I can imagine you starting a whole program called Formula One Food Diet or something like that.
No, actually, that's not a bad idea. What do you take with you to the racetrack to eat?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
thank you.
tell us just a little bit about your racing experience and why you got involved in that. And how did
Oh,
you
my.
transition out of that into being more focused on food?
Well, that was just a part of my life at one point. I was raised by a father who had my nose under the hood of his car when I was a kid. So I got into the mechanical stuff of it. And he taught me to drive. I started driving at 12. Of course, he was teaching me and in the car. And I was driving this great big Buick. I mean, it was huge. It was somewhere in, let's see, 12, anyway, in the late 50s.
Right.
I'm dating myself, but that's okay. It was a big car, but it had the first kinds of power steering. And so he taught me to drive. And I really I'm one of those weirdos, I guess, who enjoys driving. I love road trips because you can see much more than on a train. You're not going quite as fast as a train goes. And especially if you're in an airplane, I love going over the Grand Canyon, but it's a lot more fun being on the ground and having that awesome view.
Right.
But I was married at the time and had two kids, which one of my dear friends said to me, "Oh my God, you're going to race your car. Oh my God, you have two children, you have responsibilities." And I said, "Yes, and I need to have a life too," which she didn't exactly comment on that.
Right.
But I really enjoy, and this is going to sound weird, it wasn't so much the fast racing, which we didn't do a lot of fast except on the oval track. There's something that we worked on called a track that kind of does this.
A lot of
It
figure
has a
eights and
lot of
weird
curves
turns.
and things. It's the control of the car. It's
Right.
how the machine responds to your directions, basically, and literally learning how to drive. And I felt that the most valuable thing I got out of that after 9 years of playing with it on the track and a few times on highways, but it it
You
made
tell.
me. Oh no, no, not I. I have to tell you the ironic part of that. It taught me how to appreciate other drivers,
Wow.
and the fact that it was a small car, it was a little Porsche. People don't see it. If you're driving a small car and there's a lot of SUVs and trucks around you, they tend not to see you. There's that blind spot proverbially. There's a
Right.
blind spot with food as well.
And
But
we're
in
going to
this
get to that.
instance, we'll get to that. In this instance, I learned how to be aware of the fact that that driver on my left, especially, might not see me. And so
Yeah.
I had to compensate for it in the sense. So it really made me a better driver. And I taught both of my children to drive. And they learned on a stick shift, same as I did. So they're capable of handling anything. And now that
Right.
this is a scary thing. My 15-year-old, almost 16 granddaughter is just got her license. And I'm sure it's a junior license, but she's driving either I don't know, it's some kind of big SUV. I forgot what they have. But she said, "Grandma, it's really big." But I think my son is teaching her to drive, and I think she's a very responsible kid.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty sure that's important today, especially because many people just frankly don't know how.
Right.
And it's evidenced in so many crazy, and of course, I'm in Houston, Texas, And I need to say no more about that because the traffic is, other than it's horrendous.
Right.
But anyway, I have to tell you the irony of all this. Um, I guess it was about 6 months after I got the car, and I was driving in our neighborhood, and there's a curve, a couple of curves. It's an S curve, and it's usually a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, which I did. And I discovered that when they redid the road, they banked it, which of course helps your car go around it easier. And with all my driving and the racing, I got a ticket for doing 45 in a 35-mile-an-hour zone, which to
Aha!
me is so ironic. And that was the only ticket that I ever got.
You know, it's funny. I've had more than one ticket. I will admit that.
Well, I've had a couple more, but that was the ironic one.
Right. I used to be a fighter pilot, and I think I told you about that. That was years ago. And I
Yeah.
remember once I got stopped by a police officer for speeding in my car. And I just happened to mention, yeah, I'm a fighter pilot. And he says, well, you know, there's no low flying in this zone. And he gave me a full ticket. He wasn't impressed.
Oh my.
So
Oh.
anyway, so I just want to pause for a moment and say thank you to the folks who are here live on today's
Mhm.
presentation. Thank you for being here. I see we have one comment referring to the breatharian man who was revealed to be sneaking out for fast food burgers at night when nobody was listening.
Thank you, Eileen.
I wouldn't be surprised about that. But so thank you. And I want to just say to the rest of you, and to all of you, as a matter of fact, if you have questions or comments at any time during this show, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them and answer your questions or respond to your comments. So, Ricki,
Yes, sir.
transitioning into food, what was it that brought you more into the nutritional side of things rather than racing cars? You could have made a career out of that.
Yeah, I almost did, but somebody else took over for me, so I went back to the kitchen. I love to eat.
Uh-huh.
Simple as that. And I love to cook. I get a big kick out of the creative part of putting foods together.
Right.
And I mean, for years, but both my parents cooked. Specifically, my mom was really the one. My late husband used to cook. As a matter of fact, he took himself to culinary school for a while. And
Oh,
both of my children are gourmet chefs. They're amazing. That's their avocation. Um, I happen to love food and I love playing in the kitchen. And as I wrote in here, David, we share this book.
right.
You remember this one, The 25 Tools
Yep,
for Happiness? And
that's
of
right.
course,
Yep.
my chapter is it's called My Happiness Room. And it speaks to the kitchen. Where does everybody gather at a party?
Mm-hmm.
If you have a party in your home, everybody lands in the kitchen. And it's a great place for conversations. And that's where I got the idea of food for thought as well,
Oh yeah.
because we're feeding not only our bodies, but we're feeding our brains, we're feeding our emotions. We're just feeding. Every part of us is influenced and affected by food.
Right.
Your joints, your muscles, everything's affected by food. And somehow, between having two children who were active and a husband who was he was an expert at handball and racquetball. Um, and I mean, you need energy for that. And so I started playing the same type things, and now I love pickleball. I'm out there a couple times a week playing pickleball. But you've got
Right.
to have energy to do this. And where does
Right.
your energy come from? What you feed yourself. Not only psychologically, not only the idea of yes, I can do this, but it's also what you fuel your body with. You got to have it. And I got into
Exactly.
that, and I realized that what I was eating before I really got conscious about it was not the most beneficial to my system. And as we age, we really have to look at that because things don't just show up. For example, with all my research into food and disease and prevention, which is a big word, I have found that something like Alzheimer's, dementia does not just pop up when you're 65 or when you're 70. It begins way back in your 30s and 40s if it's not observed. And that may have to do with genetics, but I really believe it has more to do with epigenetics, which is beyond genetics. And I do a lot of research, not only on food combinations, and somewhere I have a book on the science of cooking and the science of food, what happens to food when you cook it or when it's raw, and how it can affect your body.
Right.
So all of this, to me, I'm a learning junkie. So I really got into food and what it does. And, why do we need to eat? I mean, you could be a breatharian.
Well, before we go there, I just wanted to say, you talk about the importance of food and, the fact that it's a source of energy, it's a source of healing. And as we'll get into this, it's actually a source of healing and medicine. In
Absolutely.
fact, before we had big pharma, pretty much all of our medicines came from some kind of a food source.
Yeah.
And but what I wanted to say was, you talked about being around in the 50s and growing up in the 50s. Well, I did too. And back in those days, I don't know about you, but we hardly ever, we'd go out for dinner once every couple of weeks or something like that, family dinner someplace. The fast food stuff really didn't exist very much. I remember there was A&W. That was like the big deal, or the drive-in place. And it was a novelty. But now it seems people are getting almost all of their food from some of those kinds of restaurants. Or, it's either fast food or it's some form of processed food that you can buy in the supermarket. And as I'm sure you're going to point out, most of that stuff is nutrition free.
Or nutrition less.
Exactly. It's completely devoid of any serious form of nutrition. Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. There are
And
maybe
so,
a couple of
you
things
talked
in
about
there.
Alzheimer's and other diseases. I have no doubt that by continually feeding ourselves stuff like that, well, we're depleting ourselves of other things that we need. And so consequently, we are contributing to an environment in our body that is not conducive to good health.
Nope.
And so, we are all going to experience some form of inflammation, but each of us is going to respond to that inflammation in slightly different ways. So some people might get breast cancer. Some people might get Alzheimer's disease. Some people might get Parkinson's. And that's what I believe is really going on here. So I think finding a way to bring our attention back to the truth about the importance of nutritional elements can go a great deal or can do a great deal to help us regain our health.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. You said it beautifully. Well, Hippocrates said it years ago, and I'm sure everybody's tired of hearing it, but food is medicine. Let food be thy medicine.
Right.
And food is medicine. I'll give you a perfect example of something that most people don't know. I will make bets on this. Lemon juice can help bring down a fever. Fresh squeezed lemon juice. Just if somebody can tolerate it, just directly into their mouths, on their tongue, it will help bring down a fever. It's concentrated vitamin C. You could use drops of orange as well. And vitamin C is an amazing vitamin. It's found in a whole bunch of foods, specifically vegetables and fruits. One of the things that we did during COVID, I recommended to a lot of people to triple their vitamin C intake. And it has to be a whole vitamin C, which means it's not just ascorbic acid.
Exactly right. I'm glad you said that.
Thank you. No, I mean, you're better off eating an orange and
exactly
rather than just drinking the orange juice, because you're getting a ton of sugar that way, but you're not getting the inside of the orange, the pith and the peel, which is where most of the minerals and vitamins are concentrated. The juice is great. It's very refreshing, especially with a little champagne thrown in. But and I'm not opposed to wine or an alcoholic drink once in a while. I think it's been about a week since I've had a glass of wine, and I mean just a glass of wine. I'm not a big drinker. I never have been. Sometimes I use it in cooking because basically it boils out. But
Well, the
no,
alcohol does.
seriously, the alcohol does, yes. But the thing
I think
is,
though you got a really, really good point about vitamins.
oh
Uh,
yeah,
I read an article recently about any of these chemically manufactured vitamins, which science claims that they are chemically identical to the vitamins that you get out of a natural source. And yet people are now starting to see that if you use vitamins that are produced in a mass production kind of way through just simple lab creation of the
mm-hmm.
chemical, you
The
actually can
recreation.
be causing yourself great stress. In fact, some of these even have been shown now to cause cancer. So I
Yeah.
absolutely 100% agree with you. If you need vitamin C, find a fruit or vegetable that is high in vitamin C content and get your vitamin C that way, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to going out and buying, supplements.
Well,
Supplements, we should never
they're
have
not.
had to take supplements. The food should be good enough.
It should be, but unfortunately, in the last 50 years, our our soils have been depleted of a lot of the
Yeah,
nutrients
that's
because
true
of the
too.
way
Yeah,
of farming. And
yeah.
this is another thing I've gotten into. I'm on a campaign with a few different organizations to bring back organic farming, which means rotating crops and using some of it, laying fallow the field, let it regain the minerals and things that are taken into the foods when they're planted. But that's another story. The importance of understanding that food, you can get most of what you need from foods if you are aware of it and mindful of what you're eating. It's a matter of, like cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cabbages, and Brussels sprouts, which I made last night. They were really good. Um, have antioxidants, and it's most of the cruciferous ones have something called glutathione. You can get glutathione in a supplement. However, if you're eating the vegetables, and preferably organic so that they haven't been infused with all sorts of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, that's where you really get the most of your digestible and usable vitamins and minerals. The cruciferous vegetables are also detoxifiers. And I just finished an article, as a matter of fact, it's on the Wellness Universe, about detoxing on a regular basis. I also published it on Medium. And it has to do with the idea that if you're eating certain foods, and believe it or not, coffee's one of them, green tea, cruciferous vegetables, grapefruit, and any of your citrus fruits are high in vitamin C, which is a great preventive. It's a great antioxidant. Vitamin D, which of course you get from the sunshine, but you also get it from things like mushrooms. Leafy green vegetables have tons, and you're going to love this. Dandelion greens, organic only. They're high in chlorophyll, which is the lifeblood of plants, and it also helps us as a healing substance in your system, believe it or not. And it
Right.
helps
Well,
to remove
chlorophyll
toxin.
apparently has a chemical structure that's very similar to hemoglobin.
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
Thank you for pointing that out. I call it plant blood. No, it
Yep.
is. But the main detoxifiers in your body are going to be foods on a regular basis. And the article I think I called Perpetual Detox Through Food and Eating Mindfully. Now, green tea, you've heard it's got EGCG, which I won't, it's a name about this long. But it also helps your liver. These are things that help your liver because your liver is your filter, and
Mm-hmm.
it filters anything that you ingest goes through your liver, pardon me, including allopathic medicines or homeopathic medicines. And you want your liver as clean as possible. So things like the dandelion greens, the green leafy vegetables, even your grapefruits, but be careful with grapefruits because they can interfere with certain prescription medications. So look at that. Um, Fatty fish and your omega 3s. And there needs to be a balance of omega 3s and omega 6s. And as far as cancer prevention and all of these other things that you could eat on a regular basis, nuts. are meant to help us. I mean, God didn't make mistakes. And that's truly how I feel.
You
Even
know,
spice.
so I'm going to tell you about a book that I read recently. I won't tell you the title just yet, but it's written by a doctor, a PhD MD, who had some struggles with his own, I think it was psoriasis or one of those skin situations. And he tried every diet under the sun, and he could not find any relief until he tried this one diet that he said, this doesn't make any sense, especially based on the information that we have been told by, you know, the FDA and the USDA and all these other so-called experts on diet. So he decided to do some research. And what he discovered is that almost all of the studies in nutrition are what we call epidemiological studies, which means they are effectively just surveys of people who have, you know, gone through specific things, and they gather up the information and then they do a statistical analysis on it and then give you some, you know, we expect, you know, 30% of people who did this had this result, and
Right.
60% had that result, and so forth. The problem with epidemiological studies is when I fill out a survey and I'm asked, how does your body feel when you eat broccoli, let's say? And how do I answer that? You know, I don't know the answer to that question. I can't remember the last time I had broccoli, let's say. So the answers that are given on those surveys are not necessarily the most reliable answers, and therefore the statistical analysis on the results is not the most reliable. The other problem is that in epidemiological studies, people often assume a correlation between things just because the graphs happen to move in the same direction. And that doesn't prove correlation at all. There was one very, very gross example that he pointed out. There was apparently a situation in, I think it was Massachusetts or someplace, where they noticed that the divorce rate was climbing up pretty strongly over a period of time. Well, strangely, somebody found another graph where consumption of margarine was going up at exactly the same rate. And so naturally, somebody said, oh, well, there's got to be a correlation here.
Right.
Which, of course, is not true at all. And then people, because they saw the correlation, certain people say, well, A causes B. Well, is it that divorce causes margarine consumption, or does margarine consumption cause divorce? So you see the problem. Anyway, he noticed that the really good studies are not epidemiological studies, but rather interventional studies. This is where, for example, in the case of nutrition, you will go on let's say we already know that you have a baseline. This is where you are today based on what you've been eating. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually have an experiment. We're going to cut something out of your diet and or add something to your diet.
Yeah.
And then we're just going to watch that for a little while and see what happens. So that's a one-person study, you see? And we might do the same thing with multiple people and see what the results are. Well, I've been talking way too long about this, but the point I'm trying to make is you cannot really rely on epidemiological studies. They are statistical analyses, and statistics can say pretty much anything you want them to say. So be very, very careful when you're looking at an epidemiological study. If it's an interventional study, you can put more faith in that because there's more time and energy put into the study. And now you're going to ask yourself, why are there more epidemiological studies? Well, the answer is easy. They're cheap. Yeah. It costs a lot of time and energy to do an interventional study. Anyway, the book that I'm talking about is called The Carnivore Code.
Ooh, interesting.
And I would highly recommend it. If you are interested in science, I would really encourage you to grab a copy of that book. It's written by a man by the name of Paul Saladino. It's interesting that he has the word salad in his name. But one of the things that he talks about in his book, he says, we just have to look at life in general. Just think about an animal. An animal can move, it can run away, it can protect itself. So its protective mechanisms are obvious and explicit. But what about a plant? Plant's stuck in the ground. It cannot run away. And yet it wants to survive too. So what does it do? It develops alternative protections. And most of
True.
those are biochemical in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the plants that we eat that we claim are good for us actually have elements in them that can be toxic to us if the concentration gets too high. And a
True.
good example of that is oxalates, which happen in
Spinach.
kale, spinach, various other plants like that. And I know people who eat like 2 pounds of spinach a day. Well, that's not what you're supposed to be doing, you know.
David, just interject here. It also makes a difference if you cook it or if you eat it raw.
That's true. That's true. But even so, the oxalates, you're going to be changing the chemical structure of them. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But so just all I'm saying is we have to learn to take everything in moderation. You know, you don't want to go on a pure diet of kale and spinach. I
No,
really don't think you're going to get much health benefit out of that. I also wouldn't recommend a pure diet of oranges and nothing else. You know, that's probably not going to be nutritional to you for a long haul. You need to have a balance. You need to find, you have to make sure you're filling your body with all of the right elements in the right combination for your body. That's
yep,
so I'm sorry. I kind of went off on a rant there. I apologize, but I wanted to get that out of the way.
It's obvious because you take care of yourself. I know you as far as that goes. And I just want to mention something about those epidemiological studies as well. Most of them, up until recently, have been done on young men. Women haven't entered the picture until the last perhaps 20 years, as far as studies go, which has been not only unfair, but damn dumb, because we're more than half the population. And so the effectiveness of those studies, I don't know that a lot of them can be actually trusted. I think we have to do a lot more research,
right?
Which I do. Pardon me, online and in books. I actually have books that I look at, and there's so much misinformation out there, David. That's one of my campaigns, and I get on my soap. I do have a soapbox, by the way. And I get on my soap. I can show it to you. It's in the closet. I get there and I speak to people about the choices. And this is where mindfulness comes in. So I'm glad I'm going to bring us back to that part and this is the fun part, because there's a heck of a lot of food out there that people don't even think about or notice. I mean, how many more vegetables and fruits are there than meats and, meat, fish, fowl?
Mm-hmm.
There's your 3 high protein, supposedly, which it is, sources. But there are thousands, literally thousands of vegetables out there, many of which contain quite a bit of protein. Perhaps in some of the things that used to have, let's say, something like broccoli used to have 40% protein. Depends on the soil in which it's grown. But you can add to the protein with broccoli, and you can add a vegetable, something like garbanzo beans or kidney beans or lots of different beans out there, and bring the protein up to a better level. So that if people are vegetarians or vegans, it is possible to get quite a bit of your protein from things like that. So there are vegetables and not so much fruits, but veggies out there that have a bunch of protein, which is necessary for muscle growth and for growth in general, and also for lean muscle growth. One of the things that I've done in the last 10 years is work with a lot of seniors, because I am one. And I found that, I don't know if you've heard the term sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting, and it's defined as age-related sarcopenia. It's because people don't have enough energy or just don't choose to do things, but it's the use it or lose it principle. Because if you're not using your muscles, whether it's for lifting coffee cups or pans or push-ups, or even on the wall, whatever you want to do, or doing exercise, then it's necessary, excuse me, I had a reminder there, to do something every
Yeah,
day.
movement's very, very important.
Movement,
Yeah.
absolutely. And this is where mindfulness comes in. Take a hike, as I tell my clients, go for a walk and make it a long walk, as long as you can handle it. And if it's hot out, try walking around your house if you have air conditioning or if you're more comfortable there. And even if you're, God forbid, handicapped or in a wheelchair or with a walker, my mother, may she rest in peace, until she was 97, the last couple of years she was a little unsteady, so she had a walker, but she walked and she walked. And a lot of the other people walk with their walkers. That's what it's called. Use it. And so I found
Exactly.
those who walked and did it, even if they just, raised their arms every once in a while and did this and, picked up a coffee cup or whatever. And we use soup cans if you can find nothing else, or filled soup cans.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They were in better shape. Literally, they exercised their muscles. And don't ever forget that your heart is a muscle and
Mm-hmm.
you've got to feed it properly as well as the rest of your body. And this is where the awareness comes in. And that's one of the things, that's the key, being
Of course.
aware of
Right.
what you're putting into your body and what you're leaving out. You
Yeah.
mentioned that earlier, David,
Yeah.
that, um, we make choices from the time we're two. That's usually when our food tastes are established by the time we're two. So feeding your children, infants and toddlers, is very important in teaching them the importance of food. And okay,
Mm-hmm.
they may spit out certain things or not like certain things. Try putting. I've made muffins with a load of veggies in them and meatballs with a ton of veggies in them, whether they're turkey or chicken or beef. But there's a way to put all these goodies into something that your kids will eat and that your spouse will eat or your significant other when they don't know what's in there, but it's good for them and you've done it. It
Speaking of uh, um, teaching our kids about healthy foods, I
mm-hmm.
remember years ago, my kids are all, my youngest is now 36 years old, so that tells a little bit about my age. But when they were infants, my wife, she actually made her own baby food.
Good.
And she started by feeding the kids, creamy vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
So she would get peas or beans or even broccoli and make these mixtures, and carrots. That's another one.
Yep.
That we wouldn't give them any of the sweet stuff at all until after they got used to the other stuff. And we would
And
introduce a few
vegetables are
meats too,
sweet.
like maybe ground up beef or something, like really
Mm-hmm.
fine taste, so they didn't have to worry about chewing. And then as they got a little older and they started to develop teeth, we start putting little bits and pieces of food in them, so they
Good.
have to chew. And
Yep.
I'll tell you, my kids are all very healthy. They're all today, I mean, very, very
Yep.
healthy. Sure, who doesn't like to have a piece of cherry pie or something now and then? Something with a lot of sugar in it. Who doesn't like to have that? But the thing is, if you train yourself early,
Right.
you don't have to become addicted to sugar. And unfortunately, how much of our population is addicted to sugar right now?
Oh, and it's scary because it's in everything.
That's right.
Even now, I have to go back to what you just said. There you are about
Right.
vegetables,
Okay.
uh,
Yeah.
because vegetables can be sweet. I mean, I've had a
Well,
few
sure.
carrots that weren't sweet, but things eaten either raw or just lightly cooked, steamed. I mean, green beans to me are yummy sweet. And I may be weird, but I find that. And certain foods have an innate sweetness. They're
Sure.
made with sugar.
Tomatoes,
It's the same.
squash, they're all kind of
Oh,
sweet.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you're teaching children or teaching an adult even to appreciate certain foods that are sweet innately, and you prepare them with enough additional flavors that bring out the sweetness. And sometimes cooking, for example, something called caramelizing, which I teach
Yeah.
on my show, on my Zoom show, where you almost burn the vegetables, and you can use fruits too. I have several soups and recipes that I do where I caramelize things. You do it on high heat. It brings out the sweetness of the foods,
Right.
so that people get accustomed to eating the foods rather than the substitutes for foods that have added sugar and salt. Innately, all those green vegetables and many other vegetables all have salt that is part of their makeup.
Hmm.
Same as we do. We're 70% salt water or 60% salt water. And if you've ever licked your sweat or even, just tasted it, it's salty. So we
Right.
need salt, but the overabundance of it can sometimes help you retain water. And this is going to sound counterintuitive, but if you're retaining water, drink more water, clear, pure water. It acts
Right,
as a
because that'll help
diuretic.
to
And there
dilute
are
the
certain,
salt.
yeah. Well, there's
Yeah.
also foods that act as diuretics. For one thing, coffee, which is one
Right.
of those things, believe it or not, on the list of, things that can help your body, but also things like cucumbers. Cucumbers are wonderful diuretics. They are full of juice, obviously, and they also help release this fluids. So it's
It's
the
interesting you mentioned
power in
cucumbers.
food.
I
Hmm?
have just started my own pickling and canning. Have
Woohoo!
you ever done that?
Good for you. Yeah, a little
Oh
bit.
my God. Homemade pickled cucumber. It's to die for. It is so delicious.
Correction, it's to live for.
Well, you know what I yeah, yeah.
Yes, I know what you mean.
I set you up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
All
And
right. So
I
you
mean,
talked about the importance of awareness. Did you
yes.
want to say any more about that? I think we've been talking about awareness right from the get-go here, but I just want to make sure we cover everything that we said we wanted to
Yeah.
talk about.
Well, awareness is the key. And just as a side, years ago, before I really got into food as a profession, I was doing image consulting, which means I was raised in the fashion industry. My mother and my grandmother were pretty much in that. So was my dad, actually, when I was a kid. And I started a company. My image consulting company was called Awareness, and it was spelled Awearness. And
Nice.
spell check had a real tough time with that one on
Yeah.
the computer. But that was the basis of my work with people. I mean, look in a mirror, and awareness of what's truly healthy and helpful to you is what I'm talking about now. And awareness of the why you're eating, when you're hungry. There's something called, has anybody ever had their stomach kind of growl after they've forgotten to eat for a couple of meals? The premise is, and it's really interesting, there's a chemical called ghrelin, which reminds me of growling, that actually causes your intestines and your stomach to make noise because you're hungry. Those are truly hunger pangs or hunger pains, whatever you want to call them. But that's an indication that your body is calling for food, and to
Right.
be aware of that. And then to be aware of either grabbing for a candy bar or a handful of nuts, for example, which can be good for you, versus, just letting it go or not paying attention to it. So we need to pay attention to our bodies. And the awareness, that's a key. And it helps us flourish. And actually, our kids will learn faster when you give them a choice between a food that's going to give them energy, truly energy. And I make energy balls with raw oats, um, dried dates, nuts, a little teeny bit of the date water, which you soak the dates in at first, and ginger, fresh grated ginger. And it all goes into a ball like the size of a golf ball. And then I freeze them. And every once in a while, I'll take out one or two to eat. And they are absolutely delicious. Natural sugars, natural ingredients, and they give me energy. And when I'm aware that I need something, I want just a little snack, I'll usually reach. I have a jar of water that's got celery cut and carrots cut, nibbles, crunchy. Crunchy helps satisfy hunger, believe it or not.
Yeah.
When you're chewing something, your body has to really break it down so that it gets to the point where you can swallow it without choking on pieces. And this is very important, by the way, because a lot of us don't do that and we'll hurry through something. And I had a sister-in-law, God bless her, may she rest in peace, who literally choked on food to death. And so I don't like the expression to die for.
Okay.
Yeah, I really prefer it's to live for. Why not? But what
Right.
I'm saying is be aware. And there was a movie years and years and years ago, something about masticate your food 24 times or 48 times till it becomes liquid. Number one, it's a lot easier to swallow that way. Number two, your body doesn't have as much breakdown time to make it into useful fuel for you. Because the reason you're eating is to fuel, we hope, to fuel your body. So this is all part of the education that I work with when I'm working with a client. And the thing is, sometimes our appetites don't match the foods we eat, and the foods don't match our appetites. That can be a problem. But my contention there is when you're purchasing food, especially for home consumption, be aware of really what you're getting. And one of the things I teach online, David, is how to store fresh foods so they don't go bad before you use them. This is a complaint that I've had for years from people. I couldn't use it up fast enough. Well, there's a way to use it in different things that will help it get into your system before it goes bad. Use it. If you're going to buy something, if you're going to spend your hard-earned money on food, buy something that you like, that you know how to store and you know how to prepare, whether it's raw or cooked or added to something else. And that's all part of education. So it's all it's all a learning process. And a lot of us haven't learned. I've learned that people have said to me, the millennials don't want to cook. They want everything. They order out. They don't want to prepare anything. They don't have time. They're all busy doing something else. Excuse me, but take the time. Give
Exactly.
yourself an hour a week to go shopping, bring the stuff home, clean everything before you store it. Invest in something, this is going to sound weird, but invest in something like a good lettuce spinner. It's useful for lots of vegetables to dry them off well before you store them, wrapped in a paper towel, and then in a green bag. And the green bags can be purchased on Amazon. There's, I think it's Mrs. Debbie's green bags or something. Anyway, I should be an affiliate of that because I've recommended that to people. But seriously, storage is important.
Right.
So,
Well,
but do
there's
it
something
all.
else about storage. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, storing stuff that's still raw, that hasn't been processed in any
perishable.
way. Obviously, you're going to have to use refrigeration and other techniques to
Mm-hmm.
keep it from going bad. But if you want to store something for a long term, this is where pickling, fermenting, and
Right.
other techniques can come into play. And I remember when I first thought about pickling, I thought, oh, that sounds like a lot of work. Well, it isn't really. It's actually very, very easy. And I found, because I'm using my hands and I'm busy preparing everything, washing, cleaning, doing the water bath, all that other stuff, I was feeling very engaged in my creativity as I was doing
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah, and to be honest with you, I got 6 bottles of pickles done in an hour.
That's great.
So it doesn't have to take a lot of time. It might take longer than that the first time you do it, but once you understand the process, then you can have everything ready and set up your own little assembly line. And I mean, believe me, it is fun. It's pretty easy. And then you've got pickles that'll stay on your shelf, well, if they've been properly water bathed, for up to 18 months,
Whew,
you
I
know?
need them up for
And
that.
when you open them, they will taste delicious.
Mm-hmm.
So There are
And the
many
other,
ways for people, if you just want to take the time to learn. And by the
yep.
way, YouTube is your friend.
Or Ricky's Kitchen,
That's right. And if you're just looking
rickykitchen.net.
for ideas about how to do
Yeah.
something, YouTube is your friend. But absolutely, let's go to Ricky's Kitchen and learn more about cooking. So, Ricki, let's talk now a little bit about, first of all, nutrition as medicine, and also
Mm-hmm.
let's really wrap this up and talk about making the mindfulness process fun. I think we're doing a pretty good job of that anyway.
Yeah, I think so. We're definitely getting there. And one of the things I want to add, David, is use your imagination in the kitchen. Einstein famously said that imagination is probably the most important faculty we have. And we also have intuition, we have memory, we have a will, we have perception, and we have reason. All of those are usable in the kitchen with food. And it's
Yeah.
also usable in a restaurant with choosing food with. As you mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't do a lot of cooking. They go out for their meals, and if I don't know about anywhere else at this point, but if you live in Houston, when you go to a restaurant, most of the portions are this big and they're enough for 3 people. And rather than consuming at that point, we have the famous people bag. It's no longer a doggy bag because I don't think the dogs get to eat any of it. But my point is use your imagination with your cooking, with your combinations of things. For example, have done this for years. I put an egg in with my oatmeal because it adds the protein and the fats that equalize the carbs, which oatmeal is loaded with, and sugar, and the energy production from all of those together give you a longer lasting spurt of energy. And adding fruit to it adds your sugar, but it also gives a little more flavor. But I also do something weird, according to my fiance. I put things like cumin, turmeric, something called garam masala, which is a combination of savory spices, into my oatmeal because it gives it flavor. I never use sugar. It's already got that. Oats have their own innate sweetness. So as this is part of my medicine in the morning, I take the egg and I put it in after the oatmeal is cooked, basically, or you can put it right in with the oatmeal as you're cooking it because it will add that extra element of the fat and the protein that we need to keep going. So
Right.
instead of your energy taking a dive after about an hour or an hour and a half after you've eaten a bowl of oatmeal, you'll stay a little bit more long with energy, or your energy will last a little more longer. I kind of get excited
I'm
about it.
glad you mentioned eggs. Eggs are fantastic,
Yep,
and they
they're
are very,
nature's
very good for you.
perfect food.
Yeah, they are. And by the way, I know most people might cringe at this idea, but eating eggs raw is actually quite good for you too. You don't have to cook the egg.
Organic, only organic.
Right. And what I've started doing, I have smoothies that I make. I
Mm-hmm.
started adding whole raw eggs to my smoothie. And when I say whole, I mean everything, including the shell.
I was just going
Because
to ask you about that. It's
yeah,
calcium.
because the shell of an egg is actually highly bioavailable. That means
Yep.
it's really good quality calcium that you can get, and your body will use it. Anything it doesn't need, it'll just get rid of. But it's a natural source of calcium. You don't have to take extra supplements. So I mean, I've been doing this now for probably about 6 months, and I
And
have
you're
not
still
had
alive.
the slightest problem. So
No, the thing is, you must wash them, same as I wash everything. Even if I
exactly.
put fruit with their skins in a fruit bowl, everything gets washed. And I
Right.
use a veggie wash from Truly Free. You'll find it on my website on rickyskitchen.net,
Right.
which I find is excellent, very economical. I mean, everything gets a bath in that, including bananas. And anything, even if you don't eat the peel, it's still going to be next to some of the other fruits like an apple or a pear, where you do eat the skin. And
Right.
please, I have a mantra. It's called scrub, don't peel. For
Exactly.
most things, including something like butternut squash, I make a fabulous apple butternut squash soup. And both the apple and the squash the peels go into the soup and get blended. And the same as you're blending your eggshells, it'll be a little grainy perhaps, but those are the things that people don't understand are really good for you. Try it. If you don't like it, do something else, but at
Yeah,
least
exactly. Yeah.
experiment, and then that's the part of your will. It's not um, something you write for when you're gone. This is the thing that you use that makes your will is the thing that helps you to do things. I want to do that, or I don't want to do that. That's your will. You've got the options. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the options include all of those things that I mentioned, the foods that you can eat all the time. If you don't like coffee, green tea is fabulous. It's also shown to help with reducing fatty liver disease, and it may even lower the risk of liver cancer. So, I mean, there's so much medicine in foods. And if you're mindful of when you're eating, what you're eating, how you're eating it, how it's prepared, because you can cook the daylights out of vegetables. I have a client now, this is very interesting. It's like the old rhyme, and I know we're about to run out of time. The Jack Sprat could eat no fat, his wife could eat no lean. Well, I've got that with a couple where he can eat anything and he loves things crispy, and she has dentures and she can't chew, so the vegetables have to be a little somewhere in between there that I prepare for them. So, but do it. It's your life, it's your body, it's your emotions, because food can make you feel great. And I'm not just talking about dopamine and serotonin in certain foods. Um, I'm talking about overall, food affects everything emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally. It affects your brain. You got to feed your brain. I have a whole talk on brain food, because certain things are very, very good for stimulating your brain and maintaining and growing those neuronal connections that are really what keep you going. It's
Right.
all involved. And food is the basis, as I said earlier, for everything. Everybody in the world has to eat somewhere, sometime, except maybe for the breatharians. But what they're doing, I think, David, is when you inhale and exhale deeply, it helps your body to process things better. So it's got a good point there. But I would add,
Right.
have a nice
So
meal.
I think what I'd like to do in order to summarize the whole mindfulness aspect of this conversation, I think you said it yourself. Pay attention to how you are feeling as you
Once
are
you've
about
eaten,
to consider having a meal. That's the
that's
first thing. How
one.
am I feeling? That's the
Hmm.
first thing. Now, is my what I'm feeling influencing my choice about what I eat? And if so, what is in that choice? That's
Exactly.
another thing to consider. Obviously, you don't want to just start eating ice cream or cookies or whatever because maybe you're feeling a little down or something. Think about what you're really about to do and how you want to
Hmm.
love your body rather than to maybe punish
Yep.
it for something that it's not doing properly or whatever. So those are two things to think about. As you start eating the food, take the time. You mentioned about masticating and chewing the food.
Do it.
Well, I don't think it matters how many times you chew, but if you have a number, then you can actually be more cognizant of every chew you take.
And it
Notice
will make
how it
you laugh
feels as you're
too.
chewing it.
And you'll laugh when you're eating, which is good because it helps your digestive system.
Beautiful. And then notice how it tastes. How does it feel? What's its
Hmm.
texture? Um,
Yep.
do I feel anything outside of my mouth and outside of my esophagus? Just to give you an example, I know that sometimes I eat uh, spicy Chinese food, and I've had this happen where the peppers that they put in there cause my head to sweat.
Absolutely.
So I noticed that because it's an unusual thing. But don't wait for something unusual to come up. Just notice how you're feeling, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And then the final part of mindfulness is when you're finished eating, when you're done, don't just get up and start doing the next thing. Stop, take a
Yeah.
breath,
Good
Maybe
point.
express some gratitude for the food that you've just taken in and invite it to help you to heal, right?
Yes.
Just have that moment. Maybe drink a little glass of water or something to help wash it down. Um, it it's there's all these things you can do to bring more mindfulness to your eating practice. And I believe just by doing that, you're just naturally going to start enjoying it more. And
Point.
consequently, I think that will be where the fun in mindfulness comes from.
You just sparked a thought. Every indigenous population that I've ever investigated for, in the blue zones and here, there, and everything, and why they live longer and so forth, every indigenous people have always blessed their food to their nourishment and thanked their spirit for the providing them with the food. So you can say a
Right.
blessing before you eat. You can say thank you after eating. Uh, that's all part of mindfulness and really enjoying your food and having your body enjoy it as well. So,
Right. Thank you. And I see Eileen just added another comment. She said, when I go to a restaurant, I use my imagination to tune into how I will feel after I eat each meal I am considering. That's a great form of awareness and
yes,
an excellent precursor to actually sitting down and eating. So if you think
at
about how
any
you're going to
time.
feel after you eat it, now you can choose with more awareness, and that's what we've been
Exactly.
talking about, right?
Yep. And
So
you can
Ricki,
feed your body. Yes, sir.
no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I want you to
No, I
finish
was
that
just going
sentence.
to say you can feed your body with your thoughts as well. It helps. It's what I call the food for thought. And Eileen, that was a perfect way to describe it, considering how is this going to make me feel once I've consumed it? And also, here's another point I'll just add to that, especially in a restaurant. Do I need to eat all of it now? Or can I just enjoy a part of it and get to the point where my body feels satisfied because that vagus nerve from your head to your gut will let you know if you just relax and give it time, as David said, give it time to settle
Right.
and put the fork down, put the spoon down, and let your body enjoy it. Enjoy conversation if you're eating with someone, which I hope everybody gets to eat with somebody, at least one other person, and let your body bless it to the nourishment of your body and your soul. So
Right.
I'll leave it at that.
No, that's beautiful. And I'm glad you mentioned about the idea of, pausing and taking the time.
Mm-hmm.
That's really important. How many of us are in a rush? We go grab a meal and scarf it down, and we don't feel any sense of satiation because we haven't given our body a chance to really get there. And that is when we can tend to overeat and eat too
Exactly.
much of stuff that really isn't helpful. So that's part of the awareness. That's part of the mindfulness aspect of this. So just a great point. Thank you, Ricki. So Ricki, here we are. We're at the top of the hour. I want to thank you so much for being here today. It's been a really amazing conversation. I just really love your energy and the fun that you have with it. Yeah, go ahead. Show us your book there. And what is that called?
Um, it is called Yes, You Can Eat Well and Eat Right and Find the Joy of Cooking.
Yeah,
Um,
beautiful. And that's available on your website?
it is available on my website in the spiral version. You have to contact me at rickiskitchen.net, and it's RICKIS kitchen, all one word, .net. And I'll
Right.
pop up there with my short hair. Uh, I use my long hair. This was taken when I decided to let it grow. And the advantage to the spiral version, you can get the paperback on Amazon, but here's the advantage to the spiral. It's big print. So for those of us who might need glasses to read things, and you get your recipe and your information, you can fold it and read it. And you can use it. There's your procedure. There's a recipe for, what was that one? One pan chicken meal. That's the only meal in there that involves anything with feet, feathers, or fins. Most of it's vegetables and fruits. But I think it's a great book. I've gotten good reviews. And as a matter of fact, I just sent one to somebody in Canada. I sent 2 of them to Canadians. And it's available, as I say, on my website. You can also find a lot of my recipes, and I didn't put this, I'll put this in the chat, David. It's patreon.com. It's my membership, the way of inviting you to join me on Thursdays, if you can, at 11 a.m. Central, and I'm on Zoom for an hour, and it's live, same as this is, and we have a lot of fun. Every once in a while, I mess up in the kitchen, which most of us do once in a while.
But no fires yet, right?
Oh, yes, I have actually. I've had a fire in the oven one time, live. And oh boy, that was fun though, because then it turned into a lesson on how to smother an oven fire. Do not use water, but use a towel if you can, depending on, the volume of the fire.
Well, anyway, so I just want to say thank you for being here. And I want to give you one final chance to say any final words you would like about the topic of having fun with mindful eating.
I think I would say give it some thought. It's food for thought. Think of, as Eileen put it, as you put it, how you're going to feel once you've eaten this, whether it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or it's, beef Wellington and all the trimmings, or the Thanksgiving meal, which is a good point. Because if you eat your fruit first at any meal, it will digest better than if you eat it afterwards. Be conscious and aware of what you're putting in your mouth, because from your head to your toes, you'll feel it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ricki, for being here. I just really enjoyed our conversation. I think we covered a lot of great ground here. And thank you to the folks who showed up and were here for the live presentation. I'd like to remind everybody, incorporating mindfulness into your eating habits can enhance your overall well-being. By being fully present during your meals, you can reduce stress and anxiety, improve digestion, and cultivate a greater sense of gratitude for the nourishment that is provided by the food. Mindful nutrition isn't about perfection or rigid rules. It's about developing a positive and sustainable relationship with food that honors your body's needs and supports your health and happiness. Thank you all for watching today's program. Remember, you can catch the recordings of this and every other episode on my website at Life Mastery TV. And friends, I want to, as a final thing, just to remind you to practice my Life Mastery mantra every single day. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So until we meet again, my name is David McLeod. I am your Life Mastery Coach, wishing you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you next time right here on Life Mastery TV. Bye-bye for now.